just before we get into anything too serious, I just want to let you lot know that the indicators used in this video will be in the bento.me link down below, so you don't have to do anything there. Just go there if you want the indicators that I'm using within this. Click the link, add it to your trading view chart, and then you can get into the rest of this video. So to begin with, I wanted to talk about liquidity, the things I'm using, things new that I'm using, etc., and go on from the points that I've made beforehand. So to begin with, I want to talk about weekend liquidity. So when I say weekend liquidity, I am referring to Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of highs and lows that are resting on the chart. I've brought up a really prime example of this right now on the chart here. So for example, we can just bring on the highs and lows indicator again. This will also be within that indicator link that's going to be down below if it wants to load for some reason. There we go. And I can even hide this now, but you can see here, so we've got here, and really this is like a really prime example of a nice setup that I've seen and traded before, and I'll talk you through that in a second. But you've got Friday's highs and lows here, then you've got, but more importantly, we've got Saturdays here, Saturday high low, Sunday high low, and then what happens is that you take these highs and then you can see it through towards the other side, and this is really a great way of looking for internal resting liquidity, especially through a weekend where potentially traders are building up positions. You then spike up to stop them completely out and then see them move in the opposite direction. Now a lot of people, and I'll be coming to this point later on within this video, but a lot of people are really interested in looking for major pivots being taken, major external pivots being taken in terms of looking for liquidity run trades. But for me, I'm much more of an internal trader. I mean, here you can see this is not the most common place to be looking for liquidity to be taken, but using, for example, daily highs and lows, and I'll also talk about resting liquidity later on in this video, we can actually identify really great points of interest. In this case, right, looking at the two series of consecutive lower highs on the daily time frame, where once taken, provided a potential nice setup to see price move towards the downside in that case. Okay, and again, you can go watch all my other videos about like reactions and stuff like that, but for example in this case here, and I'd highly recommend watching my trade breakdowns, but in an example like this, I would be looking for spike in volume, extended delta, liquidations, and so on and so forth. But yeah, looking for the internal liquidity here was extremely important between Saturday and Sunday's price action, to then run the highest and then take profit towards the lows of that range. Now also on the same side of things, when these trades are occurring is also really important. So for me, especially when you've got the Saturday and Sunday price action, right, and like you have in this case, what am I looking for actually? Well, I'm looking for this action to occur towards that Sunday evening, even Monday morning type of price action. You've got that CME open, okay, and also I'll move on to this later in terms of talking about liquidity times as well, but you've got a 12:20, 12:15 UTC time where I'm liking to see liquidity taken. But in this case, primarily in this case, you've got Sunday evening, really good time to be looking for these pivots or liquidity to be taken, right? Where you've got the highs in this case, and then in this case here, you can see Monday morning, 1 a.m., you spike up, you take those two highs, and that's your short trigger, right? You literally take your short trade there and then, you know, and you target really back down towards, I would at least at the minimum target towards these lows, but alternatively you can go here. And what's really great about this is that I personally believe that no one's really looking at said stuff like this, where you're looking at such internal liquidity that's not really too identifiable via the naked eye. You do have to dive into looking at certain time frames, looking at resting liquidity in that case, and this is like a really good example of that, because obviously you got a really big move off of that for the rest of the week. So hopefully that one makes sense. Now I was just referring to liquidity times, and for example we've got, like I said, 11 p.m. UTC CME open on a Sunday night. That's the only time I'm really looking at, that specific time of 10, 11, 12, 1 CME open type of hours for like to get a pivotal move. And that's, you get volume spikes coming in, and that's generally a good sign for a reversal, especially if it's at your level of interest, as I discussed here. But alternatively, during the week, so on a Sunday evening, you've got that specific time there, and then during the week you've got 12 to 12:30, also a key pivot time, again all UTC. Generally I would say 12:15 to 12:30 or 12:45, where you've got a potential key pivot to come in, where you get an injection of volume, right, and then that provides a potential move for you. But I'm not just referring to that time. So what I'm saying is, I'm not just going to take a trade if, you know, you get a move at that specific time. That move has to be into a level of interest of mine, you know. So for example, I must have, you know, for example, if this happened here, this same level, rather than it being 11 or 1 a.m. on the Monday, I would, you know, if this same thing happened at, you know, 12:20 the next day, I'm just as likely to take it, if not more confident to take it. So when trades happen at those specific times, I'm actually more inclined to take a short trade or long trade if it's at my key level of interest, and also I've got the time on my side. So it's not just random luck. I've done my stats on this, and I'll break that down in another video. But in this case here, you've got your exact levels of interest and the time on your side, so it adds, in my opinion, additional confluence to that trade. Okay. Moving on from the key times, so you've got those 2 key times to look out for during the week. The only day I don't really have anything that I look out for is it's Saturday, to be honest with you. So I always kind of do my plan on a Sunday morning, ready for Sunday evening and the week ahead as well, because obviously Sunday evening I could be taking a trade heading into that CME Open. And then we've got this kind of internal liquidity that I mentioned before, but I still look at this very, very much. Okay. And again, this indicator will still be down in the bento.me description below, so you can go and find it there. But here, if we just let this load up, right, and again, this is a pivot line break indicator that I got made, and it literally just highlights resting liquidity. Where is there resting liquidity in the chart? Again, you've got so many different time frames you can run on this. We've got the hourly, 15-minute, and 4-hour. Those, well, I would even look at the daily. I wouldn't go too low time frame with this, but you can pick out some really, really good liquidity regions where, and I mentioned this in the first one, so if you want to go reference that, but I just wanted to mention it because I'm still using this one now, where you've got series of highs and lows, series of highs really clearly visible, where you've got 1, 2, 3 resting stops before a decent gap in price action. So I'd be then looking, okay, this is a potential place where we could see a run of liquidity, level of interest here. Do we see an SFP into this zone? Does it happen at that key liquidity time I was mentioning before? Yeah, that's really what I'm looking for there. So in terms of the resting liquidity, and again, work same to the downside. But not only that, if we just head over to XO charts, okay, resting liquidity on, obviously you've got the pivotal lines indicator that I had made actually, but also we've got this session liquidity, and I use this a lot, right? And I link this within the Discord. Again, that bento.me link below will link you to the free Discord. Again, it's all free, so just go there, grab it and give it a try if you want. But this is within that same workspace, within the XO charts workspace section, where you've got this template, and each candle is representing a specific session rather than a specific time. It's representing a specific session where, for example, this candle here is New York, London, Asia, and so on and so forth. And we can actually see where there's resting liquidity here. Now, it would be great if we had an indicator to represent this, but you kind of have to go with your eyes yourself. So what I can see here, for example, in this case is I've got one low here, another higher low here, and another higher low here. And that is leading to, if we just turn this back off here, where you can see this is going to be like a really good run of liquidity. Okay, because not only will you be running this low here, but you'll be running this high low here, this high low here, where people might have their positions really in place. And I use this template daily to identify my regions of liquidity, to see where there could be resting liquidity to get my moves. Even here, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, run of those liquidity points there to get that nice high put in on the chart, and then you see a decent move down. This is I mentioned this probably template before, but I still use it with my liquidity and in terms of like my intraday trades and everything like that. So it's really important to mention. And also the other thing to mention with like this kind of liquidity aspect of things is that I feel like, where my edge really lies in this market is that everyone's looking for, if we just head back over to TradingView, everyone's looking for liquidity at major pivot points in the chart, rather than looking for, this internal liquidity breaks and etc. They're like, do we see a swing failure pattern at the major pivot high or the major pivot low? Whereas I'm looking for stuff that's more internal. And I think from my perspective, that is where my edge really comes into play. No one's really looking for that. And then when they don't see an SFP at a major pivot high, pivot low, they're like, oh, SFPs don't work anymore. And it's kind of where you have to dig into the charts a bit further to find your direct niche. And I'm sharing this with you to an extent, right? But then again, obviously I've got a video talking about my bias, because I don't just use this on its own. What I kind of use is, for example, so if we just do this, imagine we have a level of interest here, right? And then also on the same day, we've got a high hit rate level coming in all the way up here, okay? Price is trending down. I'll change the color in a second. It hits the high hit rate level, and then we see a move up. Now, if we just change this to white, you can really clearly see here. So, for example, if this pivot happened at, let's say, for example, 12:20, like I said, key pivotal time, really good liquidity level right here. We hit the level, we see a pump at 1220. I'm targeting my high hit rate level, and this is where my edge comes into play: internal liquidity with high hit rate levels. Okay, and that's really where my edge lies. And I highly recommend you go do some research on this type of thing, or find your own edge. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do: inspire you to find your own edge, your own niche, your own thing to dive really deep into. I've got my stats on session highs and lows for the day, high hit rate levels, etc., etc. And if you want to find out more about that, again, just check out my X account on Twitter, where I post about this stuff a bit more frequently. But again, hopefully you found this interesting. The other thing I wanted to actually finally end up on was these session times are not your generic session times. They are session times based upon my own research, my own collection of data. And again, you'll see that once you download this template, but they're based upon the peaks and troughs of specific volume throughout the average hour, per day, per year. So it's a little bit more complex than just the generic session times. And then I do a lot of stat works based on that. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Again, the indicators are in that link in the description below. Just click on that bento.me/luxury and you'll see all those indicators there. But hopefully you found this interesting. Thank you, everyone.